It's time for Recipe of the Day. This is an amazing recipe to have in your back pocket. It is probably the easiest mac and cheese recipe that I've ever made, and it turns out so good. It's all done in one pot. You cook the macaroni, and then you add the ingredients right into there, and because of the particular ingredients that we're using, it emulsifies into a sauce that's smooth and creamy and delicious right there in that one pot. Okay, so the key to this recipe is that we are cooking the macaroni in very little water, salted water, but you're cooking it in very little water so that water gets really starchy. And then you're adding evaporated milk to it. Evaporated milk has a higher milk protein content than other milks. And that higher protein content combined with that starchy water, they work together to kind of instantly start forming a sauce so that when you melt the cheese into there, you add shredded cheese into there, you just get a sauce instantly. You don't need to do the sauce separately in its own pot. You're not making a flour and butter roux or adding cornstarch or anything like that. It is just all in one pot. The other thing that I love about this recipe is that I have figured out the exact ratios that you can use to scale it up or down very easily. The recipe as written uses 1 12-ounce can of evaporated milk, and I've done that on purpose so that if you're just making this recipe, you're using the whole can and you don't need like a can and a half or half of a can, and then you've got half of a can kicking around your fridge. So the actual recipe uses the full single can, but I have figured out the ratios so you can do more, 1.5 cans, 2 cans, half a can, however much you want to do. And so I'm going to tell you how to make this recipe with the amounts that are just given standardly for with the can. And then I'm going to tell you about the ratios as well. So you're going to start by measuring 12 ounces of regular elbow macaroni into a medium saucepan or a 12 to 14 inch skillet. Now that's about 3 cups of pasta. To that, you are adding 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt and just enough water to barely cover the pasta. You just want like no actual noodles poking out of the water, but like on the verge of poking out. Okay. Okay. So then you bring that to a boil over high heat, stirring it often. You're going to have to stir it more often than you normally stir pasta because the pasta doesn't have as much room to move around in that water and you don't want it to stick. So you're bringing it to a boil over high heat, stirring it often. Then once the water has come up to a boil, you reduce the heat down to low and you're simmering it until a lot of the water is gone and the macaroni is fairly al dente. Or really what I want to say is the macaroni should be just a little bit firmer than you'd like for it to be in the finished dish. Okay. So if you like al dente pasta, then you're cooking it a little bit less than that. If you are like me, don't tell me I'm wrong. I know this is my preference, but it's true. If you're like me and you like it a little bit on the softer side, then you're going to cook it maybe too al dente so that in the end, it's going to have the kind of texture that you want. It's going to take between 7 to 9 minutes. Now, crucially, do not drain the water away from that pasta. Instead, you're going to add that 12-ounce can of evaporated milk directly to the pan containing the remaining water and that nearly cooked pasta. Okay. Then increase the heat to high, and while you're stirring continuously, bring it to a boil. Okay, once it's come back up to a boil, reduce the heat down to low, and you're adding 3 cups of shredded cheese. You want something nice and melty here, like a mozzarella or a cheddar or a Monterey Jack. Colby would work. You want it shredded, 3 cups of it, and my favorite is actually to use a sharp cheddar here, just because you get that extra cheesy flavor, right? So that was 3 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. If you're doing it by weight, it's 12 ounces. Okay. So your pot is on low. You've stirred in the cheese and you just keep stirring until the cheese has completely melted and the sauce is thickened. It's going to be 1 to 2 more minutes. At that point, your pasta is going to be as soft as you like it. Give it a taste and you can add some salt or some pepper or both if you'd like. That is it. Creamy, cheesy macaroni and cheese made with real cheese, all done in one pot, using the power of evaporated milk. Now, I promised you that I also have a ratio for you in case you want to make a different amount. It will work. You're always going to be cooking the pasta in just enough water to cover it. And then once it is just before the doneness that you like, that is when you're going to add the evaporated milk and the cheese. And of course, you're starting with salted water and then you're finishing by tasting it. And you know what? I'm just going to say something about that salted water before I go on. You're not using as much salt as you normally do. When you salt the water for pasta, we use a lot of salt often, and then we drain the water away. So we're not like consuming all of that salt, right? In this case, we're not draining the water away. So you don't want to have as much salt. That's why I specified the 1/8 of a teaspoon. So you're going to scale that up or down depending on how much pasta and water and everything you're using. Okay. So the ratio for the main ingredients: for every 1 ounce by weight of uncooked macaroni, you use 1 fluid ounce of evaporated milk and 1 ounce by weight of shredded cheddar cheese. Now that's a little bit of a strange ratio because you're doing weight and like fluid measuring. So I also have just made that a little bit simpler. It is for every cup of uncooked macaroni, use a 1/2 cup of evaporated milk and 1 cup of shredded cheese. And then remember, you're just using as much water as you need to just cover the macaroni. And it's going to be 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt for every 3 cups of macaroni. Okay. I can't wait for you to try this one. It is just so easy and so good. You are not going to believe it. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for today's podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date. So it's helpful to know that today is November 26th of 2024. And I just want to let you know that I am doing a little bit of subtle rebranding here and there. So far just on the social media pages, but you're going to start seeing it on this podcast as well. Just a little bit different color scheme and that kind of thing. So if you want to see what's happening there, you want to check me out on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. I'm in all 3 of those places as Cook the Story, and you can see what these new branding colors and everything looks like. I think you're going to love it. And make sure you follow me while you are over there. Cook the Story. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.